This video is going to take you through the installation instructions for embedded control. There's a few things that need to be installed, and just to be very clear on what needs to be done, we've made this video so that you know what to click on. So the first thing we need to do is install Code Composer Studio, which is an integrated development environment for the microcontroller or development platform that we're working with. So the first thing I need to do is click on this link right here, and I will go down to the download section, click on download options, and click on the installer that is applicable for me. You're looking for the on-demand installer for Linux, macOS, or Windows. I'm on Windows right now. At least this demo is on Windows, so I'll click on that. And that's a fairly quick install, or download, I should say. Once that's ready, I will open it, and we will start the installation process for Code Composer Studio. So Code Composer Studio, a lot of words. I'm just going to go with CCS. I'm just waiting for the installer to launch here. There it goes. So for most part, I can leave defaults in this. I'm just clicking through the license agreement. All that stuff is good. You should have OKs on most of this. I know in Linux sometimes there's an issue with something in here. Sometimes. Oop, there's a pending reboot. I'm going to ignore it. We're just going to keep going here. Leave the default usually is fine, so I'm going to leave that alone. It's going to do some validating, and I don't know why this takes so long, but it does. All right, this setup type, we want to stay with custom installation. A full installation is huge. We only want a small portion of this, so in this screen, all we want is this second item right here, the MSP432. So we'll click on that. These are basically support for a whole bunch of different types of microcontrollers, DSPs, which you might use throughout your career, but this is all just Texas Instruments specific. I click next on that. We can leave this alone. Click next, click next, click next, click next. And now it's just going to do the installations. You'll see that it's going to have to download a little less than 1 gigabyte to do the install, so you can see 880 megabytes or so. So we'll fast forward through this. You may notice that this portion of the install takes a while. We just gotta sit and wait. It's still doing its thing, but for some reason this, right at the end, this takes a while. So just be patient. Alright, now that the installation is complete, it's going to ask you to do a reboot. So we'll go ahead and do that. Alright, now that our restart is complete, the next step to go to is the higher level step 2 here, which is installing the software development kit for the microcontroller we're actually using. This is different from this checkbox here. This is actually software that we use to build the programs as opposed to just compile them. So we need to download that. So I already have the link open up here. The Windows installer is the one we want, so I'm going to click that. I already have that downloaded, so I'm just going to go straight to my downloads and open that up to run it. So wait for that installer to launch. So this installer is fairly straightforward. Leave the default install directory is good. So I just click through this. This is a simpler install. All it's just going to do is unload this stuff into that folder, and we'll be good to go. We just got to wait for that to be done. All right, now that this second install is complete, I'm just going to uncheck these. We don't care to look at those, so I'll just click Finish. And then the next thing we need to do is we need to force Code Composer Studio to recognize the software that we just installed, because it does not do it automatically, which is quite obnoxious. So what we need to do is launch Code Composer. As I start this up, it's always going to ask me for a workspace to work in. So this is where projects and projects are going to be saved as you work on them. You can select a different folder if you like. I'm just going to leave it alone here. Not a big deal as long as you know where it is. So we'll just wait for CCS to start. Okay, now we are started. It's still loading up a little bit, but for the most part we're there. All right, so this is the base setup of what we're looking at. The first thing we want to do here is we want to go to Windows, Preferences, Code Composer Studio Projects to locate this software. So we'll go Windows, Preferences, Code Composer Studio right here. We're going to just allow access to this. It's some help support stuff that Code Composer Studio includes. Can I just put that to the side? Nope. Okay, there it goes. Click on this. We're going to expand this and go to Products. And hey, actually it noticed it for some reason. Usually it doesn't. So if it didn't notice this here, you'd have to click refresh and it would see something, which it sees this one. So I'll click install. And it's going to ask to restart Code Composer Studio. So let's do that. Okay, now that we have the installs done, the next step is to load up a test project to ensure the installs completed successfully. So the first thing I need to do in this step is to click on this to download our test project. Notice that as a .zip. I'm going to leave that as a .zip. Okay, we're going to always use these project archives in the zip format, and we're not going to extract them. So to get that into my workspace that we selected earlier, I go to Code Composer Studio, I go to File, Import, Code Composer Studio, CCS Projects. I click Next, and then in this screen I go to Select Archive File. So archive file being the zip. So if I click on Browse and go find that, which is under Downloads, click on Test Project, click Open, you can see that it discovered one project inside of that archive file called Test Project. Surprise, surprise. So with that checked, I'm going to click Finish, and it is automatically going to pop up and say Project Explorer. You can see that I have a new project in my Project Explorer, which also popped up. If this didn't pop up, so if I looked like this after I did the import, I can go to View, Project Explorer, and it'll show that for me. So this is my project. If I look inside that, you can see there's a bunch of folders and other things. And for this class, we're generally going to avoid or ignore most of this stuff and look at the code file. Although we don't ask you to do this yet. This is our code file that's going to run the test project. Okay. The next thing I want to do is compile this test project into a program so that I can put it on the microcontroller. So I'm going to click the hammer button right here, which will do the compilation. You can see the console output here is doing the compiling. And if all went well, you'll get a build finished without any errors come up here. So we're good up to this point. If I go back to the instructions, we have done everything up to here. Ignore this. I have updated that so it won't be seen on future versions of the website. So we're going to go straight to step 9, which is plug in the development board into the computer. So that's the development board or the car that is available in the lab. So if you're doing these instructions outside the lab, you are stopping at this point before you come into the lab because you don't have access to this stuff. So assuming you have access to this stuff, I can plug it into the computer. It'll make a little dingy noise. I don't think you're going to hear that in my video. So I plug that in. I can see on my version, I can see a green light just like this is showing. So with this connected, we can now program it. So I'll go back over to Code Composer Studio and click this green little bug right here. That is going to take the program that we just compiled and push it onto the microcontroller. So commonly when we just start up, you're going to see that a firmware update might be required, I'm going to go ahead and do that update. You'll usually only have to do this once a semester as new software gets pushed out. So we're going to wait for this to complete, which takes not too long. All right, and then it's going to finish our programming. And then we are going to be in, boop, there we go. We're going to be in a state where we are in a different view. Notice the Project Explorer went away. And I now have the debug. I can see variables, expressions, registers up here. I can still see my main code. I can get rid of getting started. And I can see the console again. This is called the debug mode. I can switch between the debug mode and the edit mode. So this is the edit mode we saw before by just using these buttons up here. So these are called perspectives. All right. So right now we are sitting with the program on the microcontroller paused, waiting for us to run. You can see this arrow right here. When I see this error, I know the code is paused at a specific point. So if I want to run the code, all I need to do is click run right here or resume. And if I were to be able to share my my development board, you should be able to see it blinking, one of the LEDs on the board blinking. If all went well, actually I can show you this. It would be this LED right here blinking. So that seems well and good. It's blinking. Just to make sure that the blinking is because of myself programming it instead of someone else, I can change the code from this line. So it says modified line 76. Hopefully it's still line 76. From this to this. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this line, go over to the code. I'm going to go look for line 76. So line 76 is here. So that's correct. I'm going to replace that line. All that line did was just take off 1 0 here. And then I'm going to click compile again. So it's going to rebuild the program. Build's finished. It says the file you are debugging has been modified. Do you want to reload that file? So basically the IDE recognized that the program that I'm running has changed. I like to just say remember my decision here and click yes. So whenever I recompile, it'll reload the program. You don't necessarily have to do that. You could manually click the debug, which is what the instructions tell you to do. So now I have the same setup. I'm waiting to start. My line 76 has changed, so I'll just click run again. And again, you can't see what's happening, but the LED that I pointed out before is blinking a lot faster. So that's great. So we've successfully completed this general task, this high-level task 3, or to zoom up, this test project. Okay, we can move on to the next thing. I didn't point this out, but the debugger, what we're doing is running a debugger. So this just gives you a hint on using the debugger if you would like to read through that stuff. The next thing we need to do is set up this serial terminal. So this is a way for us to communicate with the microcontroller between the computer and the microcontroller. Most everybody uses the CCS built-in terminal, but if you would like to use an external terminal, there is instructions down here for, let's say, Windows using what's called PuTTY, Linux using PicoCom, and I don't have instructions for macOS because I don't use it. But if anyone would like to supply me with instructions, I'd be more than happy to add them in here. So all OS's CCS terminal, we're going to follow these instructions. So if I go back over to Code Composer Studio, to get a terminal running, I can click on this button right here, so open a terminal. I can also find that in View, I think, console, or not console. There's an open a terminal button somewhere. I'll just click on this one. I want a serial terminal, so I'll change terminal to serial. And then I need to figure out what my serial port is. So these instructions are going to be Windows specific. So to figure this out, I need to go to the device manager. So I'll open up the device manager. And I will open up ports right here. So ports, I see I have two XES110s. That's the microcontroller hooked up. One of them is a data port. The other is UART. We care about the UART one. So I'm going to note COM2 right here, UART COM2. So I'm going to change this to COM2. And then I'm going to leave the rest of this default. Okay, the default setup is correct. So if I click OK on that, you can see that a little terminal showed up down here that is showing me some basic output. All it's saying right now is the LED one is on and off as it toggles. And you can see that in the code right here. A common problem with a common issue that students see is when the development board is unplugged and plugged back in, which I just did. You can see that the terminal turned off. It says closed right here. I also disconnected from the debugger here, so I would click stop and reconnect the debugger to run the code again. Just waiting for this to there we go. All right, so at this point I can click run again. So when I run this code, this is not updating anymore. Why not? Because it disconnected when I unplugged it. As long as you plug it into the same USB port, I should be able to just use the same COM port each time. So if I click OK, I'm now reconnected and it's going. Okay, so that is a serial terminal, and that is actually all for the installation instructions. So we've done the CoComposer Studio installation, the SDK installation, the loading of the test project, and the connection to the serial terminal. So assuming all of that is good, you have completed the software installation and check. And I believe most of this is activity 1.